Our next presenter, I have the great privilege of bringing up my friend Mary Pearl Meuth, who is the Assistant State Coordinator for the Texas Master Naturalist Program, a partnership that was established in 1998. Texas A&M AgriLife Extension and Texas Parks and Wildlife today proudly administer this program with the mission to develop a core of well-informed volunteers to provide education, outreach, and service dedicated for the beneficial management of natural resources and natural areas within their communities in the state of Texas. And those include both areas that are rural and places deep in the heart of the city. Mary Pearl was a lead editor for the TMN statewide curriculum published in 2016, which is excellent, which encompasses 24 units of material covering instruction from range ecology to geology to ornithology to wetland ecology, all written by the state's top scientists and experts. Mary Pearl also organizes the Texas Master Naturalist annual meeting each fall, which I just mentioned, with 3 days of professional training, hands-on workshops, field experiences, and evenings filled with food, fun, and fellowship. Please help me welcome Mary Ann Meuth to the stage. That's Mary Pearl Meuth.
Actually, my mom's name is Mary Anna, so you're pretty close. And you gave away some of my slides by accident, so we're gonna go back there real fast. Which way do I have to point this? There we go. All right, hi. And I'm used to walking the stage, so I'm gonna try really hard not to walk away from the microphone, so y'all just kind of beckon me back if I get too far away from it. Thank you, Jaime, for introducing me, and thank y'all to the NIPSOC group for bringing me in today. This presentation was something that I developed based off of my own experience as I've put in a wildscape in my own backyard, my own front yard, and some of the trials and tribulations and failures, massive failures that I have had along the way. And really, this is a presentation to kind of just do an introduction into what a wildscape is and the process for putting a wildscape in. I recognize that I am talking to a variety of different levels of wildscaper enthusiasts in the room. I am not a plant expert. I have killed many a plant. My survival rate is really low, and certainly do not know all of the nuances of all of our native species. So please don't quiz me on the scientific names or all of the different native plants that we have. But again, this is just kind of a base level presentation to talk about my experiences and kind of how to get started as well. So like I said, we're going to talk about what a wildscape is, we're going to talk about some easy ways to get started, but then really what the role is and the why it's important to start with a wildscape project, if that's something that interests you, what the emphasis is there, and then a little bit about my day job as well as the Master Naturalist Coordinator. So getting into what is a wildscape and then why, it is not just it's not just weeds and wildflowers. A wildscape, and I don't know where to point this, that way. A wildscape is a way of designing your landscape in an intentional manner to provide a habitat for native wildlife species, be it birds, be it butterflies, bees, even mammals. So putting intentional emphasis in those native plantings that you're putting on your property and creating that attraction and that benefit back to those native species. Creating that backyard habitat with those native species not only provides that habitat, but also provides those additional resources and attractants for that ecosystem to thrive on itself. And I tend to talk really fast, so if I get really fast and going into this, it's because I'm excited. So y'all tell me to slow down too. So wildscapes, and I've seen everything on wildscapes from very planned and intentional wildscapes to kind of a little bit more messy of a garden. I personally am a little bit more of a messy gardener. I am also a very lazy gardener. I don't want to go out and water. I don't want to go out and weed. I don't want to go out and mow my yard. So I'm going to do things in a way that brings in those natives and reduces the amount of work that I have to to do because I'm lazy and I don't want to have to do it if I don't have to. There are the other spectrum of wildscape gardeners who are very planned and contained with their plants. And again, all of those spectrums of wildscaping is acceptable as you go forward and kind of find out what type of wildscaper you might be. And I've got some pictures of my yard and, again, my successes and failures in a little bit. But why? Why put the energy and effort into transforming your, be it front yard, be it backyard, into a wildscape and providing that additional native habitat for your wild species? It's because, and it comes down to kind of that single line there, is that biodiversity is important no matter where it occurs. Biodiversity is not found in monoculture front yards. It's not found in areas where there are single species dominating the environment. That does not allow for your native birds and your native butterflies to come in and find all of the different parts of the habitat they need, that food, water, and shelter as well. If I was a bird, I would want a little bit of everything. When we get our sandwiches here in a little bit, let me know anybody who's going to eat a sandwich with just one thing on it, with just bread. You want a little bit of everything on your sandwich, and so do our native species as well. The idea of tradition, again, I don't know where to point this. Sorry, y'all, I'm going to struggle all day with this. The idea of traditional lawns was actually a 17th century European concept to demonstrate wealth, that you had a dominance over the environment, not a collaboration or a coexistence with the environment, but that you dominated the environment, you maintained and you controlled it. And that idea of wealth has persisted into these green lawns that you see today and some of our larger subdivisions and urban areas. But that lawn is not that biodiversity hotspot that we need to create these flowing systems of energy. And that's where these wildscapes will play a replacement role for these monocultural lawns. So now you've got this burden on you that you have to now save the world, and you have to put in a wildscape, and you may be asking yourself, why? Why do I need to do this? Why me? Here in Texas, we are a privately owned state. Our state is 97% privately owned, 95% depending on which statistic you're looking at. And the wild areas in Texas are 85% of those are found in our urban centers, are found around where you live, work, pray, and eat. That is where we're going to make the biggest difference, is in those private landscapes, in those urban centers where we have direct access, and where our public has direct access to those visual cues of biodiversity. With those, bringing in your native plants into your cities is wilding your city, and no longer is your wild place hundreds of miles away. I could go on for hours about the difference of where wild is found, and what a wild place looks like. Does it look like the savannas and the prairies of Africa? Of course it does, but does it look like our backyards in downtown Houston? It can as well, and there's different ways to look at that. And Aldo Leopold, who's a father of stewardship for the country and for our natural resources, certainly has a fantastic writing about land ethic. And the land ethic that we have to our spaces and our natural resources is not only applied in those far-off wild places, but again, is also found in those urban centers where we live, those wild places that we live in. So now that you are fully prepared to take on this challenge, you've accepted the why and you've accepted that responsibility, how do you get started? A lot of the next couple of slides are things that I have tried, things that I have yet to try, and places where I have failed. To get started with a wildscape project, just like any other project, you want to start with your inventory. You want to start with gathering your resources, gathering your education, which is what you're doing here today, surrounding yourself with fantastic experts and professionals that have those answers, and surrounding yourself with those who have tried it before as well. And then putting a plan in place for your property, for your front yard, your backyard, wherever it is that you've determined that you want to wildscape, and then buying those plants. I will tell you that 9 times out of 10, and I'm personally guilty of this, I buy the plants first and then I make a plan afterwards. And we're all going to go out there and do it later. Y'all know we are. But that's okay. That's okay. You can flip the script a little bit. Just once you get that fun plant that you are going to buy this afternoon, then make a plan, learn about that plant, then figure out where you're going to put it in the yard. I know we're all guilty of it. It's fine. So, running through, I'm going to give you guys just 3 easy natives to start with in each of these 4 categories: trees, shrubs, wildflowers, and then grasses. If this is your first foray into natives, these are hardy in this area, in the Houston kind of lower southeast Texas area. These are pretty easy basics to start with. Again, certainly not a plant expert here, and I have tried some of these, not all of these. And so others I am looking forward to adding into my yard for sure. So, starting with trees, oak trees are a great resource for food and for shelter for our birds and our caterpillars and different small mammals as well. They have acorn mast that also produces and feeds some of our larger mammals. So if you've got an oak tree, you've got a great starting point. Let me go back and say too, a wildscape doesn't have to be lots of different types of plants. You could say, I have an oak tree, I have a wildscape. I have created a habitat for some of these native species. Mexican plums. I've killed 2 Mexican plums, so not happening for me. Early nectar. I can't tell you my successes with this one. White to pink flowers, shade tolerant. I think it's because I put mine on the west side, but that's a whole nother story. And then small ornamental tree as well. Texas red bud, seeds and nectar. Early bloomer, very, very pretty flowering tree, small tree, and there's 3 varieties to choose from. And I'm going to look at Mark in the back room. Mark could probably tell you some of those varieties of red buds to pull in. And I should have checked this list to see if any of these are available in the sale later, so I apologize if I'm telling you wrong about some of these and that they're not outside. Okay, then getting into shrubs. Cherry laurels are an evergreen, can be a hedge or a small tree. Early nectar and good fruit. I've yet to try cherry laurels. I'm looking for a place to put that. I don't have a plan in place for that one. Agarita, also an evergreen, a great early nectar and sweet smelling, has edible fruits and provides great shelter as well. And then Turk's cap. Turk's cap you cannot kill. I love Turk's cap. It is a shade tolerant plant. It is made for, it likes the shade, but it is tolerant for everything. I have mine on my west side, right against my brick, and it gets pounded with that west sun. So it is probably not as prolific as it would be if it was in my shaded areas, but that is where I've put it, and it does really, really well. It is covered with hummingbirds and butterflies throughout the year, and has these really fun red kind of fruits on them, flowering fruits. Turk's cap can also get a little crazy, so that's one that you kind of have to pull back. And you'll notice that's a trend with natives, is they can go a little big. Now getting into flowers, and this is the fun part. Scarlet sage is I just forgot the name, Coccinea. Annual set seeds. This will go everywhere. I actually started my scarlet sage with a handful of seeds from a friend of mine at A&M, and now I have just a huge kind of grove of scarlet sage. So put this in a place that you don't mind going a little bit wild. You don't mind having some of that spread. Is shade tolerant, again, covered with hummingbirds throughout the year. I've got a breeding pair of hummingbirds. I'm pretty sure that they've got a nest in one of my oak trees in the front, and they're back and forth between the sages and the oak tree all the time. I've yet to find that nest. I'm looking for it, though. Seeds, and then again, great ground cover. I've seen people turn this into almost a lawn-like feature. I haven't tried that myself. I do have one area that it's kind of spreading, and again, this is where you get to start to play and have fun with your wildscapes, is trying things, killing things, and then replanting them and trying again. And then Greg's Mistflower, our third wildflower, really hardy, easy wildflower, covered with queen's butterflies, monarch butterflies. I've got a passion flower vine right next to this one with Gulf fritillaries, and they're going back and forth on this. Greg's Mistflower, again, is also like scarlet sage in that it will continue to spread and pop up where you may not want it to pop up. So put it in an area where you're okay with it encroaching and moving beyond. Very drought tolerant, needs no help. After the 2021 freeze, I lost some of it, and then 6 months later, it showed back up. And so very, very hardy, just kind of kept going. And then lemon bee balm, another easy wildflower to start from seed, certainly, and then something that continues to seed set as well. These are great lawn covers. I use my lemon bee balm across my front yard in my kind of open wildflower patch. Annually set seeds. Lots of mason bees on this one, butterflies as well, very, very fragrant. I like taking these and putting them inside. They don't last very long in cut vases in the house, but they're they smell really, really nice. Fragrant, that's the word I was looking for. And long blooming as well. Okay, and then to grasses. Grasses are not something that I have played with, so I cannot speak very intelligently on grasses, but the three that I have been more recommended to try, the first is Lindheimer Mully. Again, haven't gotten to play with this one yet, but seeds and birds and small mammals benefit from those seeds. Great nesting material and nesting area for our birds. Inland sea oats has really large seed heads and great for birds and small mammals as well. A long season grass enjoys the shade. I don't have very many shady parts of my yard, so I haven't gotten to mess with this one yet. And then little blue stem. Little blue stem tolerates sun or part shade, readily seeds, and you can pull little blue stem out of the as you're driving by with its deep bronze in that late summer time frame. You just see these kind of real deep red grass clumps in the pastures. And that would be a great kind of indicator to go collect some seeds as long as you have permission to do so. Okay, so with those with those starting basic plants to start with, and your trees and your shrubs, grasses, and wildflowers, now it's time to make that plan and to think through a couple of things to add into your wildscape. That way. The first thing, if you are brand new at this, the first thing to do is to inventory your yard. And that is to get out and to get familiar with what you currently have. When I bought my house, I inherited all kinds of non-native and a few native plants. And I really wanted to know what I had before I started just pulling everything out of the ground. And before the freeze took the rest of it. That actually helped me. Inventory your yard to know if there's things that you want to keep or if you want to move them. There are some great tools for inventorying your yard, and I think the one that we're probably all familiar with is using your phone and an app called iNaturalist, and I've got a slide on that in a little bit. If you've got an iPhone, they now have an photo identification feature that'll at least identify your plant within the family, so that you can start to research and understand what that plant is. So again, getting to know what you have first is step one. Then getting to know the native plants of your area, coming to organizations like this, getting involved with some of the books and the writers of those books to understand what is local and native and adapted for your area. That's the next step. And then making your list of the flowers and the plants and the trees that you want, that match your color needs, your wants, that fit your yard. Again, I don't have a lot of shade, so I've got a lot of very sun-tolerant plants. Also, when I sat down and I made my list, and I left it in the car, but I actually made a list of all the flowers and the plants that I like, that do the things that I want them to do in my wildscape. And I also then categorized them, y'all. I almost put it in an Excel spreadsheet and categorized it color-coded, but that's my Excel love. But going through them and highlighting them, okay, this is a fall bloomer and this is a spring bloomer, because I wanted to have a variety. I didn't want to have everything bloom out at one part of the year. I wanted to have it kind of rotating blooms on different parts of my wildscape throughout the year. So again, that's that plan that we're going to do tomorrow after we buy all the plants today. It's fine. So this was my plan. And I took a graph paper. I had written down all the plants that I wanted, and I kind of color coded them. I mapped them out. I looked at spread. I looked at what I wanted, and I did not follow this plan. I got really close. Some of them are there. I started. And then I got distracted by all the great sales at Lady Bird Johnson, and I bought all those flowers. And so, again, you're going to have to mess up quite a few times. I've killed a lot of things. I've replaced a lot of things. But I laid things out. I'm a lazy gardener, so I made the plan one Saturday. 2 Saturdays later, I bought some plants. 3 Saturdays later, I went and I laid them out on the ground where I thought I wanted them. And it took a while for me to kind of get into and laying them all out. You see my giant spiders, that's a time indicator. I planted in the fall, right around Halloween, because that's a great time in Texas to plant. So you are buying your plants today at the perfect time to get ready for putting in your wildscape. What my wildscape looks like now, these are some pictures that I took earlier this week. Certainly it is not as full as I want it to be yet. I'm still adding more things to it, and that's okay to have some bare spots and some dead plants. I have Turk's Cap and Coreopsis and Guara and Mistflower and Engelmann's Daisy and a little bit of kind of everything all over, but I followed my original idea of putting things into groups and clusters and having things rotate on their blooming cycle throughout the seasons, so that I had different looks throughout the year. And then I have some that have just leapt outside of the wildflower bed, or out of my bed, and are out in the middle of the yard, and that's kind of fun to see too. Some other tips as you're adding in your wildscape and you're making your plan is to add in a water source. When I drew out my plan and I put it on my graph paper, I wanted to make sure that I had a place for some of the hummingbirds to get some water, and some bee watering spots as well, and for our birds. I also, the second one, my cavity, my snags is actually my pile of dead stuff. So I've killed quite a few plants in the front yard and the backyard, and the weeds that I pull is I make a pile, and that is what I call my snag set. That's where I've got some extra habitat for my wildlife. It's just an excuse for that pile of dead junk that's in the side, but that's okay. My husband loves that part. Also think about the different types of covers and homes, adding in bird nest boxes, bat boxes, adding in additional feeders, all these different parts that you want to add into your wildscape. You don't have to do all this at once as well. I want to make sure that you heard that. I am a lazy gardener, and it took me a number of tries to get to this point. And I don't do everything in one weekend. And so I'll add things slowly over time, and I'm certainly not done yet. So here's some of my side yard, my one oak tree that's providing some shade on the side, on my flamingos that keep that company, my watering source at the front, and then the rest of the scape that I've got in the front yard. That way. Some more design tips. If you are in an area that is close to green belts or has some green space in close proximity, you want to keep in mind some fire-wise techniques and principles to make sure that you have created at least a barrier for fire protection. You also want to provide compost materials. Looking at your soil is also something that I didn't start with, and I haven't talked about yet. As you're taking an inventory on your plants, you also want to take an inventory on your soil. There are soil test kits that you can buy, but you can also send your soil off to A&M. They have soil bags at your local county extension office where they will do a test on your soil so that you can identify what additional nutrients you may want to add into your soils as well. And those soil test kits from A&M are, again, found at your local county extension agent, and a great resource if you are just getting started. And then the last one that I have bolded here is to talk to your neighbors. As I was going through and putting in a lot of the native wildflowers in my front flower bed, but then really transforming my front yard, my lawn into a wildscape, I was talking to my neighbors, and I am the crazy neighbor, and I'm okay with that. I've got flamingos in the side yard, but I talked to them about why and what I was doing, and they got excited with me about the butterflies coming through. They got excited with me and put up more hummingbird feeders in their yard to pull some of the hummingbirds that I was feeding over to their yard as well. So it's a slower process sometimes with some of your neighbors, but having those conversations across the fence often is important. So this is what my front yard looks like in the spring of each year. Obviously 2021 looked much better than 2022, as dry as it was. But I will tell you that it has taken me 7 years to get to this point. Really more 5 years. I've really worked on it for 5 years intentionally. And just a side story, when we bought our house, the front yard was just total, the soil was so compacted. It was so hard. We had to put up a new mailbox, and it took us hours to dig a hole that deep because the soil was just so dense. And I have noticed, I called up a friend of mine, Tim Sigmund is our private lands biologist with Parks and Wildlife and an incredible prairie grass guy. And I called him up excited one day and I said, my soil is squishy. I can walk in my front yard now and feel the difference in the soil just from the action that these native wildflowers have done in my front yard. They have created that organic material in that top layer of my soil. And it's squishy. It sounds weird, but my soil has a different texture to it and a different walking feel to it now. And then the flamingos, they migrate every now and then. They make a front yard appearance. So again, the neighbors love me for that. So speaking of the neighbors, and this front yard might look familiar, Jaime, because I think this is your front yard, isn't it? I pulled this from your Facebook page, thank you. So Jaime does it too, but he does it really well, and I am jealous of his yard sign, and I missed the chance of getting some of the Nipsot yard signs. But communicating with your neighbors early and often is important, and there's some great ways to do that. Jaime's put up an interpretation sign in his front yard, which I love, that explains the different types of wildflowers and the history and the reasons why. You can talk to your neighbors about plant swapping, trading seeds. You can invite your neighbors over to come see what you've done, show off your work, get them excited about what you've done and changed. And then again, communicating with your HOA is also important if you live in a regulated subdivision. I earned the proud badge of getting a letter from the city 2 years ago. I felt like I had crossed a threshold, and that was my mistake for not having communicated with my city ordinance guy ahead of time and telling him this is what I'm doing intentionally and this is why. I don't mow from May till August. Well, maybe it's even earlier than that. It was February last year until August I mowed 2 weeks ago for the first time since February or March or so. And he knows now that it's okay to let my yard kind of go bypass with the regulations on how tall my grass gets, because the front yard is all the wildflowers, all the seed heads, and I've got to let it deadhead out at the end of the summer. I've got to let all of the wildflowers die and produce those seeds so that I have a good crop for next year. So again, working with your city government, working with your HOA, working with your neighbors, that's also really important as you're getting started. And there's some great resources and tools with your prairie partners, with your Master Naturalist chapters on ways to do that as well. So speaking of resources, some additional resources if you are new here, if you haven't heard already of Texas Parks and Wildlife, you will in a little bit. Diana's going to talk as our urban biologist here from Texas Parks and Wildlife. Texas A&M AgriLife Extension has some fantastic resources. That's your soil testing bag that your local county extension agent can offer. USDA Natural Resource Service, they have a web soil survey app. That's a great app that helps tell you all about the soil that is under your feet within I think it's a 10-meter radius or so. Texas A&M Forest Service has some great tree resources. And then apps. I keep pulling out my phone, but it is a fantastic resource for getting started. If you have not downloaded any of these apps on the bottom here, this would be the first few that I would start downloading. iNaturalist, Web Soil Survey, Lady Bird Johnson, and Range Plants of Texas also have some great books resources, not app resources, and websites. The Lady Bird Johnson Wildflower Center, which is in South Austin, has a great listing of native plants and a great tool that you can actually use if you're really just getting started and you want pink flowers that bloom in the fall that are native to your area of this part of the state. You can actually filter their tool all the way down to those types of wants in your native plants, and it's a fantastic website. Has anybody not heard of iNaturalist? I don't want to call you out, but okay. We're going to talk later. We're going to talk about iNaturalist later then. So all of this and all of these great ideas and great wants to add wildscaping into your yard, and we talked about the why here in Texas as a 97% privately owned state. What does that look like on a grander scale? I said earlier that traditional lawns cover 40 million acres in the United States. A gentleman by the name of Dr. Doug Talleman, he wrote a book, and he's got some books on that table back there, has this project in mind to create a homegrown national park. And the idea is that our national parks right now are what we identify as a wild place, and they're hundreds of miles away from us. What if we were to bring a national park or a wild place to our backyards, or front yards in my case? And so these homegrown national parks, his goal is to convert or to encourage and advocate for the conversion of half of our traditional lawns, so 20 million acres across the United States, into these wildscapes, creating a natural and a wildscape type of environment within half of the United States traditional lawns. He has a great website, homegrownnationalpark.org, that you can actually categorize and put your wildscape on the map. He also has a great tool on his website for finding different native species suppliers and educators and conservation organizations. It's a great movement. I strongly encourage you guys to check that out. That was definitely part of kind of my history with some of my wildscaping as well. And then Aldo Leopold, I mentioned him earlier in his book, A Sand County Almanac. He wrote, and I am going to read this, there are some who can live without wild things and some who cannot. Like winds and sunsets, wild things were taken for granted until progress began to do away with them. Now we face the question whether a still higher standard of living is worth its cost in things natural, wild, and free. And I love that idea. So before I leave you, I still have to plug one more thing. If you if this has piqued your interest, if you want to learn more and you need a group, or you want a group of fellow nature nerds to geek out about, I strongly suggest that you check out the Texas Master Naturalist program. This is my day job. I do help to run the Master Naturalist program at the statewide level, and it is a fantastic organization. I have so many friend Master Naturalists in the crowd today, and I'm so excited that you guys are here. But the Master Naturalist program, as Jaime said, is sponsored by Texas A&M AgriLife Extension and Texas Parks and Wildlife Department. The goal of the Master Naturalist program is to develop volunteers that are educated on the local resources, local ecosystem, so that they can volunteer in their communities. It's a learn here, give here model. Our program is developed in chapters. So similar to NIPSOT, we have county-based or multi-county based chapters. Here in Harris County, that is your Gulf Coast chapter over there. They've got a booth. We've got Coastal Prairie chapter just down the right way. Heartwood chapter. I'm going to leave somebody out if I start naming them all that I see in the room, so I apologize. But find your local chapter if you are interested in joining the Master Naturalist program. They host trainings throughout the year. Trainings include a basic training. It is like drinking water through a fire hose. It's 24 units of curriculum, everything from weather and soil to plants and herpetology, ornithology, and everything else in between. And then after your basic training, Master Naturalists are asked to provide 40 hours of volunteer service, and that's where you get to go out and get dirty, pull invasive species, teach educational activities to school groups or to the public. You can go out and use citizen science data collection tools, a variety of different ways that you can then provide that volunteer service with that knowledge that you have gained. Additionally, we have 8 hours of advanced training that allow our Master Naturalists to dive deeper on those topics that they are excited about, that gets them up in the morning. And there's a difference between the herpers and the birders, and there's a difference between the plant people and the kid people, and Master Naturalist has all of that in between. And y'all know there's a difference there. So Master Naturalists are out there, they are doing things, they are an army of conservation-minded individuals, and this might be your next family if you have not heard of them yet. Jaime did give it away earlier, but we are having our annual meeting just up the road at the Omni Houston at the end of October. Please come. It is so much fun. It is like today, but 10 times more intense with 100+ different types of sessions going on throughout the day. We have s'mores at the end of the night. We have field sessions all over the place. There's always dead things, always living things. It's awesome. And plants, Mark's bringing some plants this year. So please, if you have not registered, join us at the annual meeting in October. This is all pictures from some previous year's annual meetings as well. And then with that, I think that's it. I guess that's it now. So thank you all.